Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we'll be finally writing the script so as to basically insert values into our online database, and also we are going to basically create a simple HTML form to basically allow us to enter the values so that we could actually check if the values can actually be inserted into the online database. So the main reason for basically creating the HTML form instead of directly connecting the database to the Android application is to basically check if we are actually able to perform the data insertion operation. Now what happens if you basically try to connect an Android application to the database is that if you have an error, so you won't be able to recognize where the actual error lies. So in that case, what you need to do is that you need to check over two things. So the very first thing you need to check if the error occurs is that you actually need to check where the actual error lies. So you will be pretty much confused if you try to do this on the first attempt. So it is always better to basically test the database by creating simple HTML forms. And also if you are basically trying to develop a database for your Android application, you could also use the same database for your website. So let's say you are developing some application, so what you could do is that you could not only create an Android application for it, but you could also host the application as a web page on your website. So that's the basic advantage of basically creating a form. It actually saves much time while basically testing out things. So now without wasting any time, let's directly go ahead and basically write in a PHP script to insert data into the database. So the very first thing which we do is that we create a new file. So let's go ahead and type in PHP and let's go ahead and save the file. So save this thing as insert.php, save it on the desktop. So once this is done, we are good to go. Now let's go ahead and type in the very first line of code. So the very first thing which we do is that, so the very first line of code which we are going to write is require. So we type in require, and in it we are going to type in the script which we actually want to execute even before executing it, and that script is nothing but init.php. so we type init.php, and this script is nothing but this script which is saved as connect.php, but the file name of this script is init.php on the server. So make sure that you include this init.php. So once we are done with this, the next thing which we do is that we basically declare the variables. Now if we switch back to the database, which is nothing but this, as you could see, these are the names for the fields. So first we have name, then we have email, then we have contact, and then we have password. So let's go ahead and declare variables for it. So we type $name equals, and after the variable name we initialize it to $_post, and in there we basically type in the actual name. So the name for the field is nothing but name, so we type in name here. And what we do is that we do the same thing for the rest of the fields, which are nothing but the email, contact, and passwords. So now I'm going to copy this line of code and I'm going to paste it 3 more times, and simply change this thing to email, this thing to email as well, this thing to contact, this thing to contact, and the final one to password. Okay, now once this thing is done, the next thing which we need to do is that we basically need to type in the SQL query so as to execute the insert query. So we type $SQL equals insert, this should be insert into, then after this we actually need to type in the table name. So the name of our table is users, so we type users, and after this we type in values, and after this we type in the actual values. So the very first value which we actually want to insert there is name, so we type $name. Then we have the email, so we type $email. Then we have the contact, so we type $contact, and after this we have the password at the end, so we type $password. And make sure that you type these things correctly, or else you are going to get an error. And after this, simply give a semicolon and make sure that you include this thing into double quotes, and also after the double quotes make sure to add a semicolon at the end as well. So this is the complete query which we have. Now the only thing which we need to do is that we actually need to execute this query. So we type if, and to this if we actually pass in my SQLi query, and to this we basically pass in the connection variable. Now the connection variable is basically from this thing, so make sure that you name the connection variable as this which we have mentioned here, and simply pass in the connection variable. So we type $con, then give a comma and simply specify the SQL query. So we type $SQL, and once we are done with this we are basically good to go. So on executing this query, if we get a positive result, so we need to mention the message as values added, or else we actually want to mention the message as values not added. So we go back here, type in else echo values not added. So once we are done with this we are basically good to go. So we simply save the code, and we actually need to copy this code onto the server. So I'm going to simply copy this, again go back to the file manager, hit continue, go back to the public underscore HTML, and we basically need to create a new file here. So I'm going to hit this button which is called as new file. So delete the code which is already present there and simply paste our code over there. So now once we are done with this, we name this file as, let's say, add.php for basically adding the contents into the database. So once we have named this thing, the next thing which we do is that we hit save. So once we are done with this we are basically good to go. Now the only thing which remains is that we basically need to add in a form to the web page so that we could actually insert value. So now let's go ahead and type in a HTML script so as to basically create a form which basically allows us to insert values. So you might be familiar with the basic HTML tags. So the very first tag which we use is the HTML tag to define that this is a HTML. And also let's go ahead and save this file as, let's say, demo.html, save it onto the desktop and save it in the form of all types. Now let's go ahead and add in head and body to it, and let's type in the body, and inside the body let's go ahead and create a form. So if you're not aware how to create a form, this is how we create a form in HTML. So we type form, then we type action so as to mention what action we need to perform on this form. So basically the action which we want to perform is going to be the PHP script. So we type in here add.php. After this we actually need to mention the method. So the method of this form is going to be post. So we type method equals, and inside the method just specify the method as post. Now basically end the form tag. So we type form, and basically the form ends here. And inside the form, to basically format everything in a proper fashion, we go ahead and create a table. So we type table, and inside the table we want to create rows and columns. So we first create a row. So let's type in tr, close the tr tag, and inside the row we actually need a column. So we type td/td, and let's say we name this thing as name, as name is our first field. And after this we actually need to mention the input type in the next row. So basically we want a text box so as to basically get the input from the user. So again we create td, so we type td/td, and in there, in between these two tags, we specify the input type. So we type input type equals, and we actually want to extract text. So we type input type text, and let's name this input as name. So we type name equals in double quotes name. Okay, so now once we have this row, what we need to do is that we need to create similar rows for other three fields. So I'm going to simply copy this thing and I'm going to paste it thrice. So the second field is going to be for the email. So let's replace this thing by email, also replace this one by email. Then the next thing which we do is that for the third field we change this to contact, change this thing to contact as well, and actually mention this in small letters, and the final one is password, so replace this by password and replace this thing by password. Okay, so now once we are done with this, we are basically good to go. Now the only thing which remains in this case is that we basically need to add in a button so as to basically submit the values. So we type in input type equals, and basically for the submit button we type input type as submit, and the value is going to be the value which we want to basically represent or which we want to display on the button, so we type submit over here as well. So once we are done with this, let's go ahead and save the code, and let's go ahead and copy this code and paste it onto the server. So again we go back to the control panel, then we go to the file manager, continue, go to public underscore HTML, and this time we are going to upload a HTML file. So hit new file and basically replace this text with the code which we have just created. Now let's name this file as insert.html. so once we have it, simply hit save. Okay, now once we are done with this, what we could do is that in order to access this file, we go ahead and we type in the domain name, which is nothing but this thing right here. So even if we click this, so this is our domain name right here, and in this we have a file which is called as insert.html. so we type in insert.html, and when we hit enter, we will be presented with a form right here. So basically when I tried to run this form on the browser, what happened is that I actually got an error, and the reason for error was that I made a simple mistake in this form right here. So this was basically like add p.php, and that's why the form was actually getting an error. So when I resolved this issue and I changed this back to add.php, and when I basically went and opened up the form, so the name of the form is insert.html. so now let's go ahead and try to insert the data once again. So let's say the name is demo, let's say the email is demo@gmail.com, let's say the contact is 123456, let's say the password is 98765, and when we hit submit, it is actually going to show us this page which says connection successful and values inserted. So in order to check if the values are actually inserted, what we could do is that we could simply go to the phpMyAdmin. so this is the phpMyAdmin area. So inside it, we actually select the table which is nothing but users, and it is going to ask us the password, and sometimes it is quite difficult to basically log in into this thing, and the reason for that is as it is a free hosting, it might have some bugs. So again, if we go to the browse section, as you could see, these are the values which we have added right now. So basically we have demo@gmail.com, then again we have the contact, and we have the password as well. So basically we are successful in setting up the, what you could say, database, and basically connecting to the database as well as adding values into the database. Now our main goal is to basically connect this database with our Android application so that we could basically enter data into the database by simply using our Android device. So basically if your Android device has an internet connection, what we could do is that we could basically send data from your Android device to the online server. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we'll be actually connecting, or we'll be creating a brand new Android application, and basically we are going to connect our Android application to the online server, and then instead of simply inserting the data from this form right here, what we are going to do is that we are going to create all these 4 fields into our Android application, and we are going to pass in these values from the actual Android application so that the values actually get stored in the database, which is nothing but the online database. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.